can't get over the fact that you're just laying there. It's just like, hello, my baby. Oh, good start as always. Everybody, welcome to the First Ring Daily Live, because it is Friday. I am live from my bunker. Paul, where are you again?
I am also live from my bunker, but in this case it is in Las Vegas.
Oh.
At the MGM Grand.
Nice fancy room, walkout pool.
I actually do have a really nice room. In fact, this room is about the size of the bottom floor of my house. It has a beautiful view of the Hooters, as I noted earlier, and apparently an empty plot of some kind.
Maybe that's where we'll open up our next studios, right between the MGM, Hooters, right in the middle of Vegas, which campus. Both Paul and I just really love being in Vegas. We can't wait to get back at any opportunity, ever.
Vegas is, can I say the word shit show on this podcast? It's a, it's kind of it's a mixed bag, right? It's Vegas. It's loud. I 6 o'clock in the morning, I walk downstairs to get breakfast, and it's bing, 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 and really loud, music. But on the other hand, the MGM, which again is awful, has a Michelin star, French restaurant. There's an awesome sushi place here. There are great bars with like crazy good beers on tap, like Chimay and other just really rare beers, including some local stuff. I mean, so it's kind of a good news, bad news kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd say that about you, actually. Oh.
Yes, it's a mixed bag, yeah.
So, obviously, this has been a colossal week in tech. As we can see here, we've got Surface Dials, we have touch bars, we have new stuff from everybody.
By the way, I like that you're showing those two things on the screen, because as this started, I was writing an article that I'll put up for the premium users about Surface Dial, which I think is the most about Surface Dial. Which I think is the most. Sorry, I'm getting strange feedback there. Brad has left the building.
Oh, wait, that doesn't work. I just muted my speakers, and I was like, oh, that'll kill the feedback. Of course, it also killed your voice.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm not sure why that happened. I apologize. But I think Surface Dial is the most innovative thing that the Surface team has done. And it's interesting. Yeah, if you look at that MacBook thing, which I think is interesting, there's no doubt about it. And you can make a really nice argument that getting controls off the screen is a nice way to maximize on-screen real estate for the content that you're working on. There are some good arguments to be made for that. But let's face it, they should have touchscreens. It's stupid. And this device, which people misunderstand as being like a Griffin PowerMate 2.0 or something, is much more powerful than that. And I'm really impressed. I think, the Surface Studio is obviously awesome, but it's also kind of obvious, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I think this thing is a very natural digital interface that is going to be a big, big deal.
Yeah, no, and I actually agree. When I was talking with these guys, and I said, what's really nice about what you guys announced today is keyboard and mouse and pen have been around for a really long time. Microsoft will tell you they reinvented the pen with the Surface. They didn't. It's been around. Is that dial and being able to put things on the screen, which one of the guys there said, what we were thinking about when we put this on here for the first time? Remember the old, original Surfaces, like the big tables that you could put your phone down on and it would recognize what it was? That's, he said, that when we did this the first time and it worked, he was like, this reminded us of that and how that experience can change by putting things on a display. And I agree with you that this dial has a lot of potential. Actually, one of the things I wanted to after playing with one, because it's a really nice little thing, is I want one for a dial to turn up the lights in my house. I just want 20 of them, and they just do all different little things. But you're right.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
We're in a bit of delay, so this is kind of difficult. But the dial, it's amazing in so many ways. It's hard to even kind of express. Multi-touch is something that people who don't use it on PCs thinks they don't need, and then when they actually experience it, they realize how important it is, and that you can kind of seamlessly move back and forth between keyboard, whatever pointing device you're using, and touch. Touch has some downsides, right? It's not very precise. And I think this is one area where this thing is a big deal. And if you think about car interfaces for stereos and so forth, lot of touch stuff going on there. But using your finger to change the volume in a car on a touch screen while you're driving is the dumbest thing imaginable. And a lot of automakers are going to new dial type devices like you see in luxury cars, or just back to knobs, because those things are both easy to use, safer to use, and more precise. But this also solves a problem with the pen, which is that the pen is really good for one thing, but it's a mode. When you decide to use the pen, you're using the pen. You've basically stopped doing everything else. This is a seamless way to use your other hand to do other things in a very context-sensitive way that I think is going to be very natural, and do it in the place where you need it. Like you said, the deal here is it's not sitting on the desk, although it could be used that way, but you could put it on the screen and cause things to happen where you want them to happen. And I think that's, for human beings and the way that we interact with real-world objects in the real world, it's just natural. I think this is a huge user interface change for PCs, and something that is as important as keyboard, mouse, touch, and pen.
Sure. No, I hate to say it, but that's pretty well put. You're right, because when you go into pen, I was just thinking about it when you're doing it. Like when I'm using my Surface Book and I use the pen, you're up here on the screen, and your other hand's just around here, just catching fairies and shooing away flies. And so now you actually have that use, and you get a better experience out of the pen with the additional peripheral. It's the trackpad to the keypad at this point.
Yep.
To the keyboard.
It begs the question.
So clearly they made a big deal about replacing the function keys, harking back to the old IBMs. And I will say that there is some value to what they did there. I can see how it can be neat, but again, my biggest problem with this is for 30 years I've looked at the screen while typing, not down at the keyboard. So if those buttons are moving around or changing, you have to take your eyes off the content and look down at the functional keys to actually get use out of them. So it'll be interesting.
Right.
I'm sure they'll come up with some great stuff and people will love it, and The Verge will tell you it's the next best thing on the planet. But
Are you curious why they didn't have haptic feedback built into it, right?
Yeah.
They could have in some ways helped what you're describing by making it feel like keys, and it could have helped with your muscle memory.
Yeah, sure. And it's the same thing. Actually, a Microsoft guy brought up a really interesting point, and I want to see how this works out. So I listen to Spotify all day long. And on my desktop, and even on this Surface Book, I know where the next track button is. Like, I don't have to look. I can just smack it. If you don't have Spotify brought to the front, that key could potentially move. So then, like, skipping that crappy track that just came up just became a little bit more pain in the butt than just, okay, I can just reach up and smack it and go on to the next thing. So,
Brad, you know what would fix this problem from Apple? Surface Dial.
It would. Well, the interesting thing, and I think there's two really big important things that have come about probably in the last year. One, Apple and Microsoft are approaching the same problem at the same time. So with this little touchpad thing, one of the two big scenarios they showed off that were kind of neat were, one was like fast forwarding through content, like a movie or whatever. Like you can just drag your finger right along that top part. And the other thing was just some sort of like music creation and like speeding up the tempo and that kind of stuff. The dial can do the same thing. So Microsoft and Apple are actually kind of approaching a similar problem in their own unique ways. And what's more impressive, if you would have ever said that Apple and Microsoft are approaching the same problem at the same time within the same week 5 years ago, everyone would have looked at you and said, you're nuts.
Let me expand on that, though, because I'd also add, I think Microsoft's doing a better job of addressing the problem. I talked about the precision of using a physical object rather than a touchscreen. Some of those scenarios that you just laid out, moving through documents or whatever, editing music or videos or whatever, that is not very easy to do precisely with touch. Very easy to do with a physical dial, right?
No, you're completely right.
I'm not saying it's bad. I actually kind of like this touch strip idea. I think they did a great job with it. It looks great. Super expensive device. I mean, you have to spend $1,800 or more to get that touch strip. It's expensive. Surface Dial is unlike Surface Studio. Is kind of what I like about the PC market. It's affordable in the sense that $100 is a lot more affordable than $2,800. But it's not $30. I get that, but for people who are consider themselves professionals in any way, whether it's video, audio editing, document creation, creation of any kind, this is something you can add to an existing computer. Today we're talking Surface devices, but I would hope in the future that Microsoft is smart enough to allow anyone to use this.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Microsoft evolves this kind of product. Actually, one of the things I wanted them to come out, I mentioned this like half joking, was they need to come out with a quill, and then that little Surface Dial on top, you can just dab it as ink and then go to the screen.
That's awesome.
Just for the.
That's awesome. Yeah, even just use it as a base for the pen. Maybe you could charge the pen like that. That's how Apple would do it. You'd stick your pen in the top.
Which actually, that wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily charging it, but as a place to store. I don't know.
Yeah.
We will see what comes out. Surface Dial is $100, if I'm correct.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this little magic touch bar thing is $300, I believe.
Yeah. If you do the math on. You actually get a little bit more if you buy a MacBook Pro and upgrade to the version with that strip. There's actually more going on. It's not just that's not the only thing you get. I think you get more Thunderbolt ports and some other capabilities that aren't on the low end version. But yeah, fair enough. You have to spend that much to get it.
Yeah, I'm all about rehashing my own jokes, so I'm going to do one here. Just setting the groundwork. So I imagine in 2015. Apple executives sitting around the boardroom and saying, well, we know Mac sales are flat. iPhone sales are eventually going to wean themselves out of the crazy growth that they have. Now, granted, they're still selling tons, like 40, 50 million, probably even more than that per quarter of iPhones. They're fine. But they're looking, thinking, how are we going to grow revenue? And they all sat around the table, and Tim just goes, dongles. Dongles is how we're going to do it. Because this Mac has nothing. It has 4 those Thunderbolt ports at the max, which means you can't charge your iPhone without a dongle. You can't if you have an SD card, which is these things are very popular with photographers. You can no longer just plug your SD card directly into it. Anything that has a traditional USB needs a dongle. Your phone needs a dongle for headphones. It's nuts.
To defend Apple, I mean, the one thing I'll say is this USB/Thunderbolt 3 thing is the future, right?
Sure.
And the beautiful thing about this, I think, I don't remember if we talked about this on this show yet, but in the past, going back all the way to the Duo Dock from the early 1990s, Apple hasn't had like a docking solution for their devices. And there's been these really hokey clip-on things that third parties have made for MacBooks and MacBook Airs and things that kind of cover all the ports, on the side. This is a very elegant solution to docking. And you can, with one plug, have some kind of a dock that would look like the Surface dock, but USB-C based, that powers that device and provides all that expansion that you're talking about, whether it's multiple displays, just USB storage connectivity and keyboard and mice, etc. Whatever, that, SD reader that you're talking about, and just do it off of a single port. And so that's actually very elegant. If you're using the computer at a desk with a big screen, keyboard, mouse, etc., you're only plugging in one thing. And when you want to take that to go, you're only unplugging that one thing. And, these transition periods are always messy with regards to that. That's the dongle thing that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But I sort of see that as a short-term condition. And let's face it, if you're an Apple guy and you love buying their products, you're going to buy a USB-C to Lightning cable just for this computer anyway. So,
sure,
they love doing that stuff.
Well, the convenient thing is that these laptops are actually a lot smaller than their old ones. So in your bag, you have more room for the dongles that you have to now take with you.
More room for dongles. That should be the tagline. Now with more room for dongles.
Yeah. It's interesting. We will see. They didn't really announce much else. They talked about their Apple TV yesterday, where they announced TV, the app TV, with a very awkward pause. It was.
Yeah, not the TV we think of when we think of TV.
Yeah.
And speaking of beating jokes to death, I will once again paraphrase my friend Dave Carlton, who observed, "Great, yet another way to watch TV on my TV." Although in this case we could say, "Yet another way to watch TV on my Apple TV." Yeah. It's just it's not TV like we think of it. It's not live TV in the sense that you've got a TV stream coming in. It's certainly not 4K TV or 4K anything, which is astonishing to me. It's just a front end for other apps that are already on the device. And
Yep.
their TV thing is so muddled and so uninteresting. I almost feel bad for them because they had huge aspirations in this space,
Right.
and you know that what they're putting out is just garbage.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I keep going back to is when I'm watching TV, you want to lay on the couch and hit the up arrow until you find something you like. And all of these media dongles, connectors, whatever. I mean, Roku's a little bit better, but like Apple TV, you can't do that, and you can't even get close to that. Netflix sort of has it, but because it's not live streaming, you can't just go hit up until you find something and then just roll over and pass out. You have to. It's a pretty intent activity. You have to go search for it again to get all this stuff working, and that's the problem they've yet to solve, and they're trying to, but they're not there yet.
See if I can pull this one out of the past a little bit. Microsoft came up with this thing called Media Center. I assume you've heard of it. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, I think. Media Center was awesome. Media Center was so awesome that Apple copied it. They copied it first in something I think was called Front Stage.
I think correct? It was Front Row. Was it Front Row?
Thank you. It was a Macintosh application that looked just like Media Center. It didn't have any of the TV stuff. It was just, it was really weird. It was just a front end to stuff in iTunes. It was the weirdest application, and you worked with the Apple remote. And of course, they turned that into Apple TV. So the first Apple TV interface was based on Front Row, which was, of course, copied from Media Center. But Apple has never gotten this right. And it's very interesting to me. If you think about the TV app today, you can draw another comparison to a Microsoft thing, which is, of course, the One Guide on the Xbox One, which is awesome because it's based on that guide experience that Microsoft has had since Media Center back in the early 2000s. So here we are, 15 years later. They're still trying to make something that looks like the Microsoft thing, which I guess it kind of does, but it never works as well. And how fascinating is it that Microsoft, a company that has never gotten anything right in the consumer space in many ways, has been able to outdo them in this core consumer experience so consistently over such a long period of time. It's really strange to me.
Yeah, and what's even more strange is that they have no media dongle to do this with. It's
yep.
We need to, maybe we can both write it or whatever. I keep thinking there's a post out there that needs to be written. It says Microsoft's missing ecosystem parts. They don't have a dongle, they don't have anything in the kitchen. And if they're going to be serious in the consumer space like they're trying to be with the Surface brand, they need the whole thing. And
you're touching on something very profound. In fact, I'll help anyone out there who wants to write this article to get started. And it goes like this. Microsoft never finishes the job. They get the beginning of it right, and they screw up the ending. They never do it. They never complete it. What Apple does is they do a little partial part of it, and they nail it. Like whatever the little thing is they do, they always do a great job with it. But they never offer the full solution that everybody really wants. And you can see it really clearly in this TV thing. You hear TV on Apple TV, and you think it's going to be TV. It's not, and that's the dumbest thing. It's crazy to me that they would do this.
Yeah. One of the things I do like about this new touch strip up here, and it's actually on the far right side, is they put Touch ID. Apple does exceptionally well with very fast fingerprint recognition. If you've ever used an iPhone, I mean, it is quick, and they do a wonderful job of that bio login. And that is something that, to your point, they took that one thing and they nailed it. And I love Apple Pay, what they're doing with it too. I think that's a really smart thing that they're building in. That
I do too.
They could, if they really wanted to, they could take that market. They could take that whole NFC payment market if they'd be willing to allow, let's say, Edge or Chrome use Apple Pay.
Right.
They can really put the hurt on PayPal and all of those companies. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever.
Sorry, in the wake of this announcement, people who were at the event talked to Apple executives and got some more color and information from them about what's going on. I guess the little T1 chip or whatever they're calling it that sits at the heart of what you're describing is in fact the guts of an Apple Watch.
Yep.
So they've basically built an Apple Watch into the MacBook Pro, right? I mean, not the full experience. Obviously you don't get the interface or whatever, but it's funny to me that this a fairly expensive peripheral, a wearable, has been repurposed in this way And again, I don't have one. I haven't used it, but having like like you, I've used this stuff on the iPhone, and I know how well it works. And I've used an Apple Watch, of course. There's no doubt that this is going to work really, really well.
What I find very fascinating, I like supply chain stuff. So by them putting that chip into the Macs, it's now going to give them better margins on the watch, because they're now going to be producing, obviously, a lot more of those chips and those components. Obviously, the screen is different and the casing isn't. But if they're hitting economies of scale on the chip, that just means they improve their margins on that watch even more. So
sure,
a little bit of factoid. So obviously, Apple and Microsoft had a lot going on this week. Google also kind of came out of left field with the Jamboard.
which is going to, I hope they do commercials where the tagline is, "You've been jammed." Like every time, like they can use it in some scenario, and then that will be the line. That's stupid. It's like, hey, Play School, here's a Microsoft Surface Hub. Why don't you make one?
Yeah,
or Fisher Price. It's the silliest looking thing, but but fortunately, it's really expensive, so it's got everything going.
Yeah, I think Mary Jo said they're going to try to keep it under $6,000, but anything close to that, not cheap. And so I have mixed feelings on this thing. From one aspect, it validates what the Surface Hub is and why it exists. It's good that Microsoft has a competitor, blah, 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 all that. What's just really odd about this thing is that you have to have a phone or a Chromebook with you to actually really use it. It doesn't run apps locally.
Yeah, yes.
It doesn't work with Windows, for that matter.
That tells me that this thing is a $6,000 Chromecast. How is it not? And by the way,
it's true.
I was just going to say, I think the pricing speaks to something we've been kind of discussing around Surface Studio, and then before around Surface Hub, right, which ranges from, I think, 6,000 to 21,000 or whatever, maybe 8,000 to 20, whatever the price range is. It's huge. These screens are expensive, and to get a very big screen that does touch and pen to the precision that Microsoft wants, and I guess what Google wants as well. This is not a Vizio part. It's an expensive panel.
Yeah, no, and people always say, well, my 55-inch TV, like this is the top of the line. Samsung right here was like $1,300, but it doesn't do touch in any capacity. And even that Jamboard only does 16 points of input versus the Surface Hub, which I believe does 100. And so I don't know what the max touch inputs on the Surface Studio are, but I would imagine it's at least 10, if not well above that. And that's where that's the turning point between these devices.
I bet it is 10. I think 10 is what isn't Windows pretty much 10 touch points.
I think so. Yeah, it's probably limited by the OS. So I don't know. That's where these things get really expensive. And Google is now showing, hey, if you build a 55-inch touchscreen, it's not cheap. And so
in case you thought Microsoft was just stroking the price there, no, these things are really expensive. Yeah.
So interesting. A couple other quick things. Raf is actually writing up some stuff for Thurrott, and he wanted me to mention it. He says cumulative updates fixes Centennial apps, and people will soon be required to use that version to run apps, so upgrade as soon as possible. Just check out, Raf's going to be writing a post here in the near future, kind of clarifying. He loves the Centennial stuff, and God bless him, because I don't. It's a little bit, I understand what it is, but Raf is the technical wizard of the Thurrott.com universe by all means.
Yeah, and he's really embraced that Centennial stuff. I fly home tomorrow morning.
Oof.
Yep. It's okay. Yep. Mary Jo and I are giving a talk today, and then we're also going to be on a panel, I think with Jeffrey Snover and Carl Franklin and some other guys.
Gotcha. And then when do you head overseas next?
I have no idea. That's it's probably. I'm probably going to be home for 2 weeks, and then the next trip.
And what's your social security number?
024.
Just seeing how far you take us. Just filling out a credit application for you. That's all. So obviously, it's been another crazy week here at the Thurrott.com universe. Next week, I will be going to New York City again for a day trip. That's going to be kind of nuts. for
Now,
Microsoft.
this is for the Office event, right?
Yeah, for Microsoft Teams, as it's now being called.
So, what is the schedule for that event? Is it like a 9 a.m. to noon, 1
No, I
1
believe
p.m.
it
kind of thing?
starts. They chose some very odd timing, even by Microsoft standards. I believe it starts at 11 and goes till 1. So I'm assuming at noon pizzas show up. I'm not really, really sure how this is going to work. But yeah,
So
11
hopefully
to
you can
1.
do something from the event. I don't know what kind of demo opportunities there might be, but it'd be cool if we could do this like we did from the Windows event.
Yeah, I'm sure we probably can, at least after. That's for sure. We can definitely do like a live. Yeah, so definitely be watching out for that coming next week. That's Monday through Thursday. We do this. Paul and I hang out every day and just chat about life, feelings, emotions, and Hooters across the street. So, you got anything else, Paul?
No, I spent much of yesterday with Elvis impersonators. I drove around in a car with Brad Anderson. That was kind of fun.
Nice.
But no, I'm looking forward to coming home.
Are you?
Yes. Yes, I am.
It's a long flight for you. That's got to be, because I know it's like 4 hours for me.
That flight, the flight I took coming here was at the end of a very long day. I covered that event live for 2.5 hours. I spoke to Microsoft on the phone for a long time. I wrote articles. I did Windows Weekly, which was 2 hours. And then as soon as that show ended, I turned off my computer. I hopped in my car and I drove to the airport. And when I was on the plane, even though I know how long it takes, it was 8:30 at night. And the guy, the pilot came on and said, "We're going to be in the air for 5 hours and 50 minutes." And I literally, I like cried out before I could stop myself. Like, what? Because I didn't get here until, 2 a.m. my time.
Sure.
And it just felt like infinity, It's a long day.
Yeah, I don't look forward to those trips. The West Coast is a great place to be. It's not a great place to travel to. Once you're there, it's fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just can't imagine doing that in a covered wagon. And then I always think that whenever they were going out west, like the first people were, trotting along thinking there was going to be great things, and then they come to the Rockies, and somebody just had to have gone, God damn it, like just seen that and just.
Oh, they got to Arizona and they settled in, and then one day they were like, "It's not always this hot, is it?"
Yeah, exactly. Oh God.
Oh boy.
Oh God. All right, cool. Well, I guess we can just wrap it up there with Surface Style, Touch Bar. All your monies belong to Microsoft or Google, or not even Google. Well, I guess Google if you want a Jambar. Microsoft and Apple. And
who doesn't? Who doesn't want a Jambox? What's it called? Jam something? You've been jammed.
Jamboard. I kept thinking Gig Jam, but I wonder if they're going to have any legal issues with that, because Microsoft has Gig Jam.
Right.
Which is a terrible name in itself.
It really is, yeah.
It sounds like something you go to the doctor for. It's like, yeah, doc, I got this Gig Jam going on again. And
we have a cell for that.
Okay,
actually,
cool,
we have
guys.
a jam for that.
We're going to wrap up the live episode of the show here. The replay will be back up online if you missed any of it, or you just love hearing our lovely tones all day long. You can check that out. And we will catch you next week on First Ring Daily Live. Thanks for watching.